is Warren from Seawall. So I'm glad that Jeannie and Cosme invited me to moderate today's roundtable. And we have so many guests who will speak today. So I think we try to get the rhythm. And so the title for today, I couldn't remember, but it's about independence. And I mean, did you get the answer already? No. I didn't listen to anything.
Oh no.
Oh, Scotland. Scotland. No. From today, then?
It's not good.
Oh, okay. So, but I think anyway, it's a very interesting moment to talk about that. Of course, Parasite is moving to Quarry Bay, and so it somehow it marks a moment of the development of art here, I suppose, at least for Parasite and people who have been involved in here. But also for the socio-political situation of Hong Kong, I think that notion of being independent has been also very timely. And so I'm glad that you invited me and everybody to be here to take a little time to think about that issue. And so I was told that because we have many people here, we're trying to do it fast. And I will do a little very short introduction. So basically everybody will have 3 minutes, hopefully it will be shorter than 3 minutes, in a way to tell what sort of situation or Jeannie's term, the statement that the speaker would have on the notion of independence. And because actually I suppose in Hong Kong everybody will think that everybody is independent somehow. But I suppose that should be under many different conditions. And at least just to make it short, when we think about independence, at least we would think about freedom, right? So we would be free to do something that we feel independent. But very often, freedom is not very necessary to be together with independence, a lot of national, international politics we have seen. So to start with, I will introduce all of them one by one later, and I would have somehow a timeline as an introduction, because this is a very subjective timeline when I try to think about what does it mean, the independence in Hong Kong when you're trying to do some sort of artistic practice. And because very often when we think about independent organizations, we think about all these people, they are really working hard today. But maybe someone who did something different in the past, they were also independent, but maybe not, in today's context. So I guess it makes sense if we can know a little bit of what's happened before. But I would like to say that this is really subjective because I just tried to remember last night. So I tried to Google, but that most of this information could not be really Googled. So I may miss a lot of things, but somehow at a certain point, I think these people did something I would feel, they had the guts to do, and they wanted to explore the space, and they wanted to be somehow be different. And so in 1974, I found the Phoenix Scene Club started. It's a small network of filmmakers or people who are interested in filmmaking, who would like to do something more serious, which is very different from so-called mainstream, Cantonese or Mandarin movie we would see in the cinema. And also important, members of this club also, developed into other direction, which also, continue today. But at the same time, thinking about independence, actually, I found that in 1977, they already got the financial support from the then Urban Council on some events. And in 1974, again, the Gallery de Monde started as a commercial gallery. Now they still existed in Dado Street. And mostly you would probably think about that, yes, it's a gallery. I think in the past few years we feel more galleries, but all the time people will always think that it's like a frame shop. They make frames. But it's also interesting to think about, like, in 1974, if you wanted to do an art gallery in Hong Kong, with some sort of exhibitions, but who's going to buy the work, and who's going to finance, and making frames may be a way to maintain some sort of independence if this independence could be defined by themselves. And then 1977, and the Hong Kong Art Centers start. We all know Hong Kong Art Center. And in 1979, is the City Contemporary Dance Company started by Willie Cho. Oh, I also want to mention that the Hong Kong Art Center, yes, in a way we would think some sort of independence, but from the very beginning, even before they were built, it was already, involved by some very senior government official, like, the governor back then actually supported a lot, and they got the land for free. And then, 1979, City Contemporary Dance Company was founded by Willie Cho, and we still, direct it. But the important thing for visual art, maybe we think that, like, there's a theater, the City Contemporary Theater, and gallery started in the mid-80s, which was, I would say, that very important venues for experimental theater and performance installations back then. I think they continued till the early 90s. And in 1981, the Aston Fine Arts started with the commercial galleries everyone knows today, and they are now in Aberdeen. In 1982, SUNY Icosahedron were founded by Eric Lam and Jacob Wong, and also others, and the experimental theater companies back then, when nobody would do anything, just like walking around on the stage without seeing anything, and then they did. And then 1983, Hana started in Kadori View, and which was like almost like a garage or like a basement. And you can imagine like what we would have back then, and Johnson started in the basement, which looks totally, maybe even creepy. And from 1983 to 1996, actually, there's the workshop. It's a small dark room. Was founded by, still working today artists, Saiki or historian Eric Lai and others. And it's a group of people that were really interested in photography. They would like to explore, experiment. And then they started, but shortly after they started, they also started to do exhibitions. And also worth to mention, like in from 93 to 95, and for 3 years, they did the so-called open workshop, which is the open studios events. Of course, the scale is not big, but still, like, it's all around town, like, in Hong Kong Island, someone in Kowloon, even I remember I joined it, like, in the last year or the second year. And it also is interesting because it was the first time I saw the space in Kennedy's town, and later that space became Parasite. And it was 94. And then in 1984, the Hong Kong Finish Club, occupied the ice house where you can see today. And then, of course, like every year, they have made these festivals. But also worth to mention, in 95 and 96, and there were 3 artists, Josh Horn, Yang Wong, and Antonio Mack. They actually made this free art school on the rooftop of the Finish Club for a very short time because somehow it was not sustainable. Or actually they got the space for free, but I suppose like there were some issues between them and the Finish Club administration. And then in 1987, these 3 artists, also we have 4 artists, and they did this one weekend event in Kennedy's town, at Kennedy Road 15. So-called the ghost house, like it was almost like halfly abandoned, but somehow like it was listed to the artists at very, very low rent. And one of the artists, like Josh Horn, he had a studio there, and then a lot of artists, his colleagues, like the space, found very interesting, and the big event. But interestingly, this event was also organized with someone we know today, like Christine Lowe, our Undersecretary for the Environment today, and then Oscar was part of it, and also lots of other people. And it's only for one weekend, and then a lot of people went. But somehow it was interesting because a lot of people, so-called from the society, were also there. So you can imagine back then, the community was super small. And in 1986, Video.ARCHIVE, started and founded with members from the Phoenix Scene Club, the main phone, Adam Powell, and a few others. And in 1990 to 92 is a quad society that is located on top of the Alvin Street, not far away from here. And before that, I think they had a short time. It was called in other state, other location called E-Zone. But then it's a space that's really bohemian. We have artists like Sheung Wan and a few others. And then they had some sort of kind of members shows. But also they have a lot of guests, putting shows and lectures together. I had a very, very deep impression that I attended actually by Alhan Group in 1992 when he was on route to Paris, I suppose, and he introduced the contemporary Chinese art, and which I found amazing. And then 1986, almost done. 92 to 95, we have the Art Asia, the art fair, which runs only for 3 years for some reason. Maybe you can sort out the reason. And then, so the last thing, in 1995, is the founding of the Hong Kong Arts Development Council. And then it was the beginning, the individual art practitioners and organizations could have, direct funding for projects. And also it's became important support for the beginning of Parasite, One A Space, Artists Commune, and many other organizations you know today. So you see that through this time, that idea of independence, there's a freedom, but at the same time, there's also a lot of restraints, I would say. And how all these practitioners could really maintain the freedom, or at least relative freedom, would be a very interesting topic for us. But first of all, now we like to have the members here to do a small, very small statement and talk. How should we do? Shall we do in physical order or in age order or just by random? Okay. Maybe talk with you. Same ways to be. You can start. You don't want to start? Okay, you start.
Okay.
By the way, Isaac is the chair of the board of Video.ARCHIVE.
Well, first of all, I think this panel discussion is very valuable for me because, I actually did my first exhibition in Hong Kong at Parasite back in 1999, and I think also another thing which is very interesting is that I'm probably one of the youngest person here who's running one of the oldest visual art organization in Hong Kong, and I think I'm the second generation of directors of Video.ARCHIVE. I think the topic really reminds me a lot of vigorous questions that we talk about internally at Video.ARCHIVE. Particularly about how we can actually bring forward the organization and bring the organization to another level, but without losing the values that we set up 30 years ago. In 2016, it's going to be 30 years anniversary of Video.ARCHIVE. So there's actually a lot of discussions about that. Are we still keeping that sort of alternativeness? Because we started up as an artist-oriented organization, Artist Collective, and a lot of these events are very grassroots and also very unorganized in a way. And also we started up as the archive of not based on an organizational institution, but really from the personal sort of collection. So how we can professionalize the organization and get more funding and so and so and so, and produce things that are sort of really fitting into the context today, but at the same time without losing the synergy that we kind of set up 30 years ago. So, which, this is a never-ending question, even internally. But I just want to sort of bring up sort of a conceptual framework of what we can discuss today, which a lot of time, this question, I think we are kind of, preoccupied by this sort of binary opposition of different words. For example, professional versus alternative, eliticism versus grassroots, rich versus poor, curatorial driven versus artist driven, coherent versus fragmented, cutting edge versus traditional, and focused versus diverse. So all these kind of things are kind of really we are dealing with every day at Video Touch, as strive for a sort of an answer of how we can bring another 30 years in the future. So I just want to bring up this sort of question, and maybe we can think about this as a way of not either or binary opposition between these words, but really kind of taking a very queer approach of maybe we can be everything, or maybe we can actually think about a new model of running a nonprofit organization. So yeah, this is pretty much what I want to say. Order of age.
So Passion is the executive director of AAA and also the founder of AAA, and
in fact, we met exactly when the archive was founded in 2000, so 15 years ago. And I guess it's quite an emotional day in the sense that Parasite is leaving, and the AA and Parasite have been geographically located very close to one another. In fact, one of the first programs that the Asia Archive organized was in collaboration with Parasite, looking at alternative and independent spaces. In fact, it was a conference called Space.ARCHIVE. So just a few things maybe in terms of, I agree with many of the points that you're saying. Sort of as an independent nonprofit, this constant need to negotiate, on the one hand, survival, perhaps growth, and on the other hand, not giving up your value system as well. And I think it is always a very delicate and fine balance between that. For us, I think it's particularly important in thinking about independent spaces in Hong Kong, because where we began with the Asia Archive in 2000, where we are today, is a very different kind of place. Obviously, the market has grown very, very strong for the arts. There's now government interest in the arts as well. And I think this kind of trying to position yourself in between these two forces is something that is again, it's a very tricky balance at times. So on the one hand, we're trying to be independent, but on the other hand, because of the generation of new interest through the market and through government, more interest also comes your way. So I think it is in terms of where you get funding, in terms of sort of the conditions attached to that is something that we consider daily. So also I just want to say in terms of your comment, Warren, earlier, in terms of Parasite, this conversation being particularly important at this moment in time in Hong Kong in terms of the socio-political situation. But at the same time, I'm thinking 14 years ago, the conversation, or even further back than that, was very much around 97 and the notion of independence from Britain. And now we're talking about independence in relation to universal suffrage. So I think there are these very important moments in time that perhaps are bringing us together to think about these things right now. So just one more thing in terms of, I realize we don't have much time and there's lots of people that need to speak, but perhaps one more thing I just wanted to say in terms of thinking about the Asia Archive is one of the areas that we have are focusing on is the archiving of independent spaces and practices. Many of them are now defunct or we've watched their rise and their fall. When we came about, there was this feeling of this network throughout the region, and there was a lot of conversations happening between organizations, but in fact, it's only really in Hong Kong that many of these organizations have been able to exist, ironically because of government funding. So again, it's like they're independent, but they're actually receiving government money. So also thinking about, anyway, I'll just finish up, but thinking about how also archive or to sort of protect these independent spaces that have happened historically along the way as well.
So we have Tobias Berger, just to let you know that he's the curator of Amplus, but also like he was the curator of Parasite and the second director from 2005 to 2008. And also before he moved to Hong Kong, he was the director of Art Space in Auckland.
Yeah, I mean, when I talked to Ron yesterday about independence, I was a little bit thinking about my own time when I started out. And in that time, people like Hans-Ulrich Obrist or Huan Wu came up, and you thought like, wow, that's what you want to be. You want to be an independent curator. And only after a while you realize that independent curators are actually not independent. They're only called independent. But they always have to try to sell their shows to certain institutions. So that doesn't work. And then certainly I got lucky working in Auckland at an art space that was very well governmental funded. Before that I actually worked in Kassel in a huge space that nobody cared about and was very well funded. And that was probably the most independent time in my life. And also here at Parasite we could do almost everything. I mean, we could do that K14 show which was really about censorship. We could show a lot of political stuff, a lot of things which were rather radical, couldn't show in museums. And that's also this idea about independence. There are two parts. There's, on the one side, you have to have an independent institution, and you have to have an independent mind. You have a lot of independent institutions, but you have directors or people that run it that are so not independent of their future, their own biography. They basically don't work independently. While you have the other thing, you have, and that's what happened to me when I left Parasite. I went to Korea and was part of the Namjoon Pike Art Center. And there I had an institution where I could do everything. I mean, that was completely radical because every time any government guy asked about, how can you show pornography, you said, oh, Namjoon Pike did it, and And so that was good, but there, and that was also the break, because I didn't speak Korean, I couldn't understand the structure, the politics, the way to play the game. And that is also, I think, what's happening here now with M+. We are very independent. We didn't have any, there was never the government who said you cannot buy that or you cannot do that or things like that. And even when we showed things like Complex Pi, which was a big piece of shit on West Kowloon, it was somehow okay, but we had to fight for it. And we had to play the game. We had to completely play the game of how you get the approval for things, how you get the things. And I think that's also the future for us in M+. And now we have that big building, and we are at the moment at 70% detailed design, but we're actually in time and in budget. And that gives us the ability to do almost everything we want, because we cannot be criticized on these very formal ways of working. It's the same with collection. Claire and Ron are in the acquisition committee, and we can almost buy everything as long we keep the rules and play the rules. So this began, and I think that is with that government will change, politics will change in Hong Kong in the future. But I think if you play it right, you can do still amazing things here, and you can do things that you cannot do in any other museum in the world or in any other art space in the world. And so, now let me get out. I think that I should give over to the government institution.
So we have Ivy Lin. Ivy is the curator of Oil Street Art Space, and as a government-supported institution and this whole museum system, so she was also curator of the Heritage Museum, the Visual Art Center, and Hong Kong Museum of Art. So Ivy.
In responding to the things that actually our organization is totally not independent. We're a government office initiated by the museum section of the LCSC. So actually we opened in 2013 last year, and we just opened for 1 year, but we have a lot of programs on hand. But the thing is, although we do not have independence at all, but in comparing to everything in the Museum of Art and also the Heritage Museum, I think that when the office is small, we do have some space for freedom to create exhibitions and programs by ourselves. So when the All Street Art Space opened in 2014, actually we are thinking of two basic requirements from the government. The first one is we need to revitalize a historical building into an art space that is a revitalization project of the monument office. So the second one is actually the Leisure and Cultural Services Department, the museum section, would like to see whether there is any momentum in the art field, that when an art space is not a museum, evolved from a museum but not a museum at all, how can art be brought into the world? So bearing in mind that to basic background, basic conditions, we try to work out what program quickly. So the position of the oil is quite clear. It is an incubator for new art. And the second one is we are in project space because we want to do a lot of community engagement projects. So we need a long time to take place. And the third one is a facilitator of activation. That means we are doing empowerment work. We try to bring together creators, artists, and also the public together and try to do a lot of encounters between each other and let them to be the artists themselves and to garner an alternative way and perspective of life and also to the society and try to create kind of a new beliefs or new values in the course of waking up. So that is what we are doing at the moment, and we are doing projects basically. But in terms of projects, we need to have some segments of presentation of the projects in terms of exhibitions and also talks and tours, etc. So do come to our space and see what we are doing. And actually, it will be more freedom than in the museum in our space. Yeah.
So now we have a Gumten. So he was running Artists Comedy actually for many years, right? Maybe like around 10 years ago, right? Yeah, but then later, unfortunately, the Artists Comedy ceased to operate, and then John started with his wife Claire, this CNG art department, which is on exhibition, discussion, and also education.
And I would like to share my experience in around 2000. When I was a very young artist, actually, Warren said Parasite, One Day Space, and Artist Community was my learning target. And I think that kind of independent art space is quite exciting for young artists at that time. So I would like to try to learn how to sustain or set up an art and set up my own art space around that time. So I invited by artist community. So I worked there for six years. In 2004, I worked alone for 1.5 or 2 years alone. And at that time, I learned more. I learned how to write a proposal, how to clean the floor, how to set up the lighting, set up a whole exhibition, and how to write a report. And then I repeat that kind of experience. Write proposal and then do exhibition and then report and then write proposal and then keep repeating. And then I think it's not not independent anymore. Because I need to follow the instruction from the government and from the funded council. And so in 2007, me and my wife set up and very independent art space because we want to don't get any funding from government, and we want to self-sustain by ourselves. Yeah, so actually it works. It works. Yeah. So CND art partner is. Thank you. Now we are still working the CND art partner, and also there are many different art activities there. Yeah. And from 2007 till now, we don't get any funding for our operation and for administration. So we need to pay by ourselves. Yeah, for 7 years.
Anyway, John had his galleries until 2006, as far as I remember, right? And where is in now very trendy Alvin Street, Hill Street, and then he also started this art walk. Everybody know, and he's also critic and writer. And you can see this right now. John.
Thanks, Warren. The topic today is the word independent, and it's if you get my name card, it's got the word independent there. But I put it there because it's the sort of language of art, and I've never considered myself part of the art world. I went to university and studied history and social work. I came to Hong Kong knowing no one, and I worked for a couple of years for someone and then opened my own business. And then in 1997, the office I used in Sheung Wan, the person I shared the office with, escaped back to the UK. And I had a large office which I decided to devote half to an art gallery. In fairly naive starting, although I know I've collected art, so I know what to do and how to do it. The space was called John Batten Gallery, which was the silliest name you could ever use because people immediately think you're fairly arrogant. Because in this town, people actually hide behind a name. If you look at most businesses, they tend not to use their own family names. It started in 1997, and then after 2 years went up to Soho. But in fact, I didn't really want to talk about this because when Warren gave his list of all the institutions and art spaces, I don't think an art scene should be defined by that, because I've always believed that, in fact, the most important thing in an art scene is actually the artist. And the word independence, to take full circle, is all about that. It's about a person, or maybe sometimes a group of people, being creative. And that often means working in a small, often hostile space without much support and doing something creative, or to have a creative outcome. And I've always thought that is the most important thing. And it's very interesting that in Hong Kong's long debates about art and culture, that often that point is not made clear. I've had a number of hats, and one of them is a writer, and I've always dabbled in writing when I had the gallery because I had time. I sat in the gallery doing other things to do with the art, but I always had time to actually write things. And I write art criticism, I write commentary, I have a special interest or an interest in urban planning, so I write a lot of critiques about urban planning and our landscape in Hong Kong. And I write art reviews, for example, for the South China Morning Post. And one of the things I really, really, really detest, and luckily not many people do it because I think they're a little bit scared of me, but I've noticed on Facebook, a gallery or an art institution will put up an art review and say, thank you to the writer. And I think at that point, a little bit of independence has been lost, both by the writer and by the space doing the acknowledgement. In fact, I don't really want friends as an art reviewer. I want friends in the art world, but as an art reviewer, to be, or an art writer, to be a little bit critical, to actually say something that you feel has not been tainted by an underhand payment, as happens in China. You want to say, I am independent. So I think as art writers in Hong Kong, there is just too much crappy writing and too much acknowledgement. Would we, I've got another minute?
No.
No.
But we can go back there. Okay, Content, hey, he is an artist based in full-time since when you were still a student, right? Yeah. Okay, so this is like a fixture there. Exhibiting with different galleries, not only one. Okay, we can exhibit, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I graduated in 2009, and before the graduation, I had a group show with Gallery Exit and the first time cooperation. But actually, until now, I also have a cooperation with them. But I never signed any contract, so I still think I'm independent. And actually, that's a quite serious reason for me. Like, I don't suggest them to give me contract although they mentioned one time, long time ago, and I never remind them. Because I think if I get any money from them, and I will owe them something, and I don't like that kind of feeling. And I think if I can keep this kind of distance, I can cooperate with other institutions or gallery maybe that I want to. And sometimes when they ask me to do any exhibitions or do you want to do any commission work, then when I say no, I also feel independent. How to say? Because I think when the people like they saying the chance is not much for the young artists, but you cannot how to say, lower your standard to do something that you don't want. And I keep this kind of lifestyle for I think around 4 to 5 years already, and I still survive, so that's still in a good way. And recently I tried to do something which is not I'm familiar with, like I come to this talk because I'm quite shy to say anything, and also I try to write the art critics recently. Just one time, and very short. And I feel satisfied, and I think I jump out from some kind of the typical impression about the artist. And yeah, I think do something different that's important.
Okay. So now we have Mari Lauren. Mari is a writer, translator, curator. Now you work independently, but you also work for you work in Hana, right? In the 90s. Maybe you can tell us.
Okay, I'm definitely the oldest person here, so I know a lot of history. I've been in Hong Kong since the early 80s when I was a student at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. In fact, when Antonio Mack was taught there briefly, I saw those independent spaces about Hong Kong being, and I hung out a lot at Louis' house, CCT, the City Contemporary Theater, where a lot of avant-garde stuff happened. And that was actually, I think, for me, the best space that's ever existed in Hong Kong because it was so free and open. I mean, what I think. Primarily, in the 90s, I did work at Hanart from 92 to around the end of 94. Primarily because Johnson Chang, who was an old friend of mine from Taiwan, we used to have a gallery in Taiwan, and I studied in Taiwan for a few years in between being in Hong Kong. He was doing the China's New Art Post 1989 show, which was an insane undertaking, but he had very little staff, and he needed my help with this big catalog, and we were getting faxes from Regent Team and ringing, it was a big mess, so that's primarily why I was there. I did have a chance to curate a show of women artists at the time from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China that Johnson kindly allowed me to do, and that was my first taste of really being able to put something together that I thought was important as a curator. I want to say that as an independent curator, I do to bias that the most important thing is how you frame independence in your own head. And for me, my independent approach is that every exhibition is always an intervention. It doesn't matter if it's in a commercial space, if it's in a museum, if it's in the Goethe Institute, at a private apartment, because it's always intervening in some way. It's messing up the artist's life at that moment in time. It intervenes in his daily practice. It's an intervention in the space and in the site. And it's an intervention in the public life as well, because you're creating an environment that never existed before. The public may or may not come into it. So that's how I approach things. And I have worked at the Hong Kong Museum of Art as an independent curator. I've worked at Gallery Exit as an independent curator, all in projects that I proposed, or artists proposed to me, and we worked together. I am now working on a show for Frocking at Chancery Lane, which is also a commercial space. And I have had the privilege of being yelled at in every single one of those spaces. So for me, it's interesting. You come in, you have an idea, you want to execute it, you may or may not get paid, you may or may not have to fund it yourself. But the point is that the idea, what is an exhibition? What does it mean to show your art? What does it mean to bring it out into a particular space? These are all questions that you can look at anytime, from any perspective, in any kind of space. Because it's really about a site where an artist can unfold.
So, Cosmic, you can say something?
I won't be very long. It's more important to discuss together the many things that were opened up by all the interventions. I think especially because there are different understandings of independence and also the relative importance of this value of being independent, probably a better word that would sum up the ethical expectations of working in this field is integrity. Integrity sounds a bit self-righteous, so independence does the trick better, but at the end of the day, it's the integrity of keeping a clear distinction between one's own sense of mission and one's own sense of intellectual project or political project. That one thinks it's important to be doing in one's work, and the surrounding circumstances. The surrounding circumstances are primarily, the funding sources, because at the end of the day, it's about money, it's about people. So at the end of the day, the main sort of like ethical expectation is maintaining the sense of alternate attendance between the expectations of the funders, the taste of the funders, the value system, political positions, and so on of the source of money. And I think at Parasite, because of the Parasite, there's the long history of integrity of this institution, the different moments in which there were very clear positions, interventions, and statements that were very courageous at the time, very, very important for the history of Hong Kong in many cases, that bravery and that importance went beyond the archive, and they were contributing to the civil society of the city. So I think that history, that accumulated sense of examples of integrity is something that becomes the mission of the institution, that anyone that works responsibly at RSN needs to uphold.
Wallace Zhang is a professor from the School of Architecture in Chinese University, and he is the chair of the board of the 1A Space. 1A Space, also an independent organization in Hong Kong a long time ago. Maybe you can say something.
Sorry, I was late. I'm Jan from the UK. Yeah. So, excuse me for being late. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I want to share some of my experience as the chair of the 1A Space. Something is when those alternative space that we established, I think like 15 or 10 years ago, which is quite alternative. I think nobody really do this kind of space. And now maybe more commercial galleries are setting up, and even government people are doing some alternative space. So I think a big question is whether those alternative space has opportunity to provide. I think this is a big question. But we have a discussion actually on this dialogue today. And in fact, we try to evaluate among ourselves whether we should survive or not. But the answer is positive. Because even though the government, private galleries, and other people are interested in having different kinds of spaces for art and contemporary exhibitions or whatever, I think we still survive for two reasons. Firstly is, I think we kind of provide a ground or platform for young people to nourish. I think this is one of those mission and probably vision that we keep ourselves holding on. I think this is one aspect. The other thing is, even though I think different people are trying different things, and I think Hong Kong as a metropolis, we need diversity. We need different people doing different things. Our agenda may be changing from time to time. And also, I think we have a recent discussion among ourselves. Okay, we were established in 1998. Okay, now it's more than 10 years. And now we are also facing another big problem. I mean, those young people, avant-garde people, getting old. So we need more young people, indeed. And by the thinking in this aspect, I think we are recruiting more young people, young-minded. I think there are good things about this and bad things about this. The good things about this is because they're more energetic, they have new things they want to do. Bad things about this is because they don't know what has happened, or they break through all those, whatever. And they may not have experienced the difficulties, I think, on the stage, because at the moment when those alternative spaces were established, I think we encountered lots of hurdles, financially, culturally, and socially, because nobody knows what you are really doing, right? And you don't know how to explain what you are really doing, because I think what we are really doing on what we really want to do may not exactly the same because we intended to do this, but because other people may conceive it otherwise. For your information, unfortunately, we did give an archive. I think this is a book that we established, I think it published about 10 years ago. We already have this concept of what alternative space, and that was a big conference that we tried to gather information and also discussion among not just people in Hong Kong, but probably around the region. And maybe as a courtesy to our host here, I would like you to keep as archive as well. Because I missed most of your discussion earlier, maybe I have to say sorry for that, but I think I also could hope that I think alternative spaces, whatever its forms like governmental, private, or commercially, I think we still have a right to survive. And how to do it, I think is still open-ended for the moment, because now we have lots of players. We have players from all around the world, and we have players from Germany, stay in Hong Kong, go to Korea, and go back and stay here somehow, or other people who may have other interests. In the end, I think Hong Kong is an interesting place. The interesting part of that is because we can accept whatever possible, or I should not say that, I think we can accept things which is reasonably advantageous. I think this is a good thing about Hong Kong. Keep moving. Thank you.
So we have already spent an hour. That's it. So I think we are going to open to the floor because time is very tight. I just have a very, very quick sum up. Like we mentioned different things in general, like to maintain that independence, like interventions, almost like some sort of accents, and then integrity, and also added like autonomy. Like John has mentioned that once you find that you have lost autonomy, you really want that you still have independence. But at the same time, we know that concerning our social political situations, the government policy or the government system actually will not allow so much independence. So how we can deal with that? But at the same time, we try to be positive. We hope there could be some sort of synergy, and we hope that we could really narrow all this gap, between all these stereotype, typical field and areas. And it's important that independence also means like the platform for diversity. The platform for diversity. But anyhow, it seems that like it's really necessary to be independent, right? I would like to open it to the floor because we have a big audience here, and also I recognize a lot of people, they have been involved in running independent organizations, institutions, or practicing independently. And that notion of independence will be very meaningful from all you tell us. Questions or comments?
While it seems like it's this desire to remain extremely independent, on the other hand, it's important to, I think, frame it that and embrace the fact that we are not fully independent, and because we have the capacity to respond to whatever situations out there. Whether it's funders, there is a certain realism that keeps us down to certain landscapes that we have to respond to. I think they're not to belittle institutions that just circulate amongst them and only speak to one another, but there's something very valuable about really responding to larger landscapes beyond small communities.
And Connie Lam is the director of Honda Center.
I always think that it's like independence is about a matter of state is about the mindset, is a spirit. Independence is a spirit. And in the meantime, we need to know that we have to depend on each other. For example, is like our center cannot survive without the other art organizations. It's really important. So we are independent, but in the meantime, we are dependent. And take John's work as artists is really important. So if the artists don't have an independent mindset, actually all the artworks is just for the is for the auction house for selling. So we need someone who have independent mindset. So for me, I think is again for independence is talking about the mindset rather than it's just a physical space. And those who involved in all these art organizations, I think they have to give autonomy for their younger generation's colleagues to do things. And I think this is also a very important independency.
I have a question, and I suppose anybody who, from the panel who would be interested, and also just pointing to that perhaps right now a bunch of people up in the north of the United Kingdom have just voted not to become independent. And I wanted to see, because we were talking about independence as if it's a universally admired, something to achieve at all costs kind of good. And I wondered, what, if in your sort of respective careers, organizations, what would encourage you to vote not to be independent?
I mean, you're summing up this a little bit wrong, Warren. I think we all acknowledge that we're not independent. In some way, we are beholden to something or codependent. I think Connie just said. Like I could argue that I'm very independent. I've never received $1 of government money. Never. Does that make me more independent than anyone on this panel? No, of course not. I'm a person, I have relationships, I rely on help and inspiration. So independence is not, I don't think that's the goal. I think it's creativity that's the goal, what I was trying to say before. And I really object to a hierarchy of famous spaces in Hong Kong. Because in the end, I don't think that really matters. It's about the creativity that emanates from that. And I remember on the, one of the highlights of Hong Kong's creativity was that first wonderful day when Oil Street opened many, many years ago. It was the first day that 1A Space had its exhibition. And we all went around, hands up who was there that day. The first big open day. Again, was the start of Ivan's Commune. You remember? And we all wandered around looking at this fantastic space. There was an old government office, and all sorts of people did things. Armand Chu had a studio, 1A Space opened, Artist Commune had something. There was a gallery called Z+, which was Zuni icosahedrons, short-lived gallery. And that's actually really the only time I felt that Hong Kong has been independent. Because there was a lot of creativity there and really quite wild things happening. Just as a tagline, I want to just say one thing. I don't want to dominate either, but I just want to say one thing about where we are, which is in Sheung Wan. Because I think that's actually one of the critical things that Parasite's moving. Because Sheung Wan, for those who, in the early days, when Warren and Sarah and Phoebe and Chun Ping started Parasite, and Patrick Lee, Sheung Wan was the place where no one wanted to live. Sheung Wan was a place which was dominated by ghosts and a lot of bad spirits.
Patience.
Yeah, and the first Parasite was actually, the first Parasite, of course, the first exhibitions were in Kennedy Town. The first Parasite was actually next door. In fact, it's the mirror image of this property, which is quite interesting. And Chun Ping, I always think, is the soul of Parasite. Don't know if Warren and the other members would agree with that, but I've always thought it was the soul of Parasite because Keith grew up in this area, and his father, I think, had a hawker booth on Pound Lane. And it's interesting, one of the only remnants of the old, what I call the old Parasite, those early days when it was like a collective, there's only one that I can think of remaining, and that's a letterbox on a tree on Pound Lane. I can pointed out to you one day, when one of the exhibition students had to do installations around the area, and it's the only thing left that I can think of. And so this is quite significant. To move from here to Quarry Bay, I think is almost the most significant thing about this final day or final couple of days, because it's actually sort of reinvention of the parasite soul, because that history of here is gone. You're moving, and also this thing about like institutions need to survive. I don't think that. I think if you die, fine, something else will happen. So I'm not a big supporter of one A dies, don't worry, something else will happen. Or CNG dies, or John Batten Gallery dies. It doesn't matter.
I tended to agree with John on the one hand. On the other hand, I think that I would like to raise the 4 keywords for everybody here. I think for those alternative space, no matter how you call it, parasite or parasitic or whatever, right? I think there are 4 keywords that I think is for the survival and further development of it. I think the first keyword is keep it small. Small is beautiful on one hand. Local, I think you talk about Sheung Wan, essential for how it works, parasitic relationship. The third, I think, is connected. I think it's not independent as for itself. I think everybody is connected somehow. We are independent, by all means, we are not prison. We are not kept on whatever prison. We are independent by all means. Right? And the 4th keyword probably is diversifying. I think the beauty of that probably will make the scene, the overall scene of Hong Kong, the cultural landscape of it, more vibrant, more creative, and maybe if you want to use the word independent, I think it's not the key. I don't think independence is the key, because we rely on different things. We rely on value, we rely on markets, we rely on relationship, the PR thing, funding from government or funding from whatever sources. We depend on something. I think the autonomy, I think, is essential. Whether you want to do whatever your space want to do, I think it's very critical. Because I think Hong Kong probably might be facing a crisis is you're instructed to do something that you don't want to do. It's an overall political, maybe a kind of atmosphere. We have to be aware. I think this is something that I think as in an alternative space, I think we may have a mission or vision to say no, or maybe people instead of always say yes, right? I think this is some response to try.
Reading the moment that I read it, it's a question that maybe would go beyond the context of Hong Kong, and just reacting to what John said, that basically the context of Sheung Wan has changed. No, it's obvious that it's gentrifying. You can see that it's clearly not the same Sheung Wan as whatever those origins are. So, in some sense, as many artists run spaces in the world in the 90s, which in perhaps sociological terms could be understood as more in the context of the alternative than in the independency. And I associate alternative to, let's say, Seattle 98. Like having this idea of creating forms of artistic and cultural production which are, let's say, before the truth or the art fair as we know it today, for our own community. So if neoliberalism clearly turns around Parasite, it's clearly more interesting perhaps that there's another area where there's some kind of other reality that has more sense to talk about the politics, the art, and the cultural production that we do. But yeah, that's just a comment. I think that it's interesting not to see this changes of the independent non-for-profit art spaces as something only a Hong Kong thing, or only like to not see it in a provincial sense, but to see it in a wider sense that this happens to many countries, no? So you would have it in Amsterdam with W139 for people who know this artist run space, or you would have it at La Panaderia in Mexico. So all these moments of, again, Seattle anti-globalization, global society that was wanting to create something different institutionally, but independent and alternative.
John, about talking about the spirits, as one of the founders of the Tower site, and Keith Zhang is not here. What do you think of, what is your response about this sort of transition or transforming Tower site into something else, or moving forward from a personal perspective about spirit?
I don't know if I can talk about the spirit, but when that kind of question is called, I always remember what David Clark has written about Parasite. Even just in the first few years, you could see that notion of science specificity has been somehow, changed or even, transformed or even erased. As you can see, the layers of paints on the wall and all this tiles underneath has all gone, and it's all on the surface will be done by someone else. I think for me that's meaningful to see how people can make use that resources to do something that I didn't even imagine. And so in this case, for an organization, I really don't know if you have that sort of soul or spirit, because I would imagine that would be more stuck to a person. And well, I was really thinking about even this very subjective piece I made last night, and I was also thinking okay, well, some of the organizations like the Pop Society is no longer around, the artist community is no longer around, and why they are no longer around? Is it because they want to keep their spirit, or they want to teach their spirit? I don't know, right? But somehow, for sure, I know that because the person who found the space probably has lost that sort of momentum to keep it. Okay, but maybe he still has the spirit by himself. So I think in the case of Parasite, I always find myself very amused as an onlooker, to see if this is going to be bad or if this is going to be good. Because somehow I don't really feel I owned it, And I'm sure that Keith would also let go of that.
I'd just like to sort of respond to John's comment earlier in terms of independent being a word that is really used by the art community, and perhaps replacing that with creativity. Because I think the problem with creativity is that also has been appropriated by governments, by market forces. And so when you speak to a lot of people, we might think, well, street was the most creative moment in that history, but when I speak to people, they think the rubber duck is a really creative or the pandas at PMQ, or the elephants that are now in Swire. So I think we also have to be very careful about this notion of creativity as well, and how it's being appropriated, and how art is also being appropriated to sell more goods, to push national agendas, for a whole range of things. So maybe in terms of independence and the roles that we idealistically play, it's really not trying to carve out a space that challenges some of these things, that creates alternate realities, maybe not always very successfully, but fundamentally also allows for experimentation and allows for failure as well. And so, that was just a comment.
I was at a dinner party last night, and I had to explain a joke, which is the best way of ruining a joke. Because if you have to explain a joke, you've already completely lost the opportunity of humour. Sort of just thinking about the idea of creativity and independence. The semantics around those words are incredibly loaded, and we end up having to explain them. So I'm just wondering if we as like myself as an artist and other people as curators and archivists and as runners of science, runners of spaces and runners of cultural things, sometimes just do we get too tied up in the semantics of words, and do we just let that become too overpowering and forget about what we're trying to do as artists and as people trying to do things, and that we end up in these sort of spiraling bipolar conversations.
As I mentioned before, like I don't want to sign the contract with the gallery. and that's one thing I think it can be expanded to talk about, like for the art space, and also those like features, the diversity, creativity. I think the most important part is the elasticity, because to me, like this kind of art space, they should do something which is unpredictable to the society and also to the audience, the familiar audience. And because if you talk about the independence, the government they give the funding to this kind of art space. I was thinking this kind of art space, they share the same public resources, and also kind of like the legal power with the government. So how can you say is dependence or independence? But I think the situation is like I get the money from gallery when I sell the works, and that's when I mean like how can I just try my best to get the resources and do what I want, and that's about the elasticity. And one thing I want to mention is like I look at the history because I never experienced like Rowan mentioned the art space and different gallery, and at that time, which is like close to the Hong Kong go back to China, and the art space become quite popular, and kind of like the 20 years later, like nowadays, and because I think the ideas at that time, which is more like to discover what's the cultural identities of Hong Kong people, and also the media and ask for the space to do what they want, and which is quite close to the political situation at that time. And compared to the days like today, and the China kind of like make the colony, or like Hong Kong become a colony, and those kind of ideas in 1997, it seems like developed into a mature way, because in the political situation, some parties which is more concerned about the local situation, about the traditional Chinese, and also the how many citizens should be like in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, I mean the immigrants, they need to control. And I don't know if it's like a starting point from there or anything like that. But I think the effect, which is you cannot predict when you do more, which is that the elasticity.
I think we probably should just round up the discussion break. These people were hardworking, they still need to go back to office after this. So, Parasites, thank you so much, of course, Jimmy, to make this happen, and I'm reminded, like, tonight is a party to bid farewell of this space in Korean Street. I don't know if that kind of space could happen again sometime in the future. Obviously, like, society has changed a lot, And so let's see what would be unfigured.